Amid stalled Pyongyang-Washington nuclear talks, North Korea's latest activities have once again put inter-Korean relations at risk. And just days after an abrupt order from Kim Jong-un to get rid of South Korean facilities at Mount Geumgang Resort, North Korea conducted yet another round of projectile launches, raising concerns in the region. Meanwhile, South Korea's intelligence agency today said Kim Jong-un is seeking to meet with U.S. President Trump before the year ends. Today, we go in-depth on possible solutions to strained inter-Korean relations and prospects of North Korea-U.S. nuclear talks with Dr. Myong-hyun at the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So, South Korea's National Intelligence Agency today said that Kim Jong-un is seeking to meet with U.S. President Trump in December at the latest. How do you gauge the possibility of that happening before the year end?
Well, that's a possibility clearly, and since we have a confirmation from NIS itself, it's probably that the North Korean leader is entertaining the opportunity the chance to meet with President Trump for the third time very seriously. We have to understand this in the context of the self-imposed deadline that North Korean leader came up with earlier this year, which he stated that the United States had until the end of the year to change its negotiation approach towards North Korea, meaning the United States should turn softer towards North Korea. So, in a way, Kim Jong-un might be thinking about meeting with President Trump one last time before the deadline, before he changes his approach towards the United States, meaning a more hardline, more aggressive approach of provocations and whatnot. So in that sense, I think he's trying to maximize the pressure on the President Trump. He's dangling two options in front of Trump in a way. One is one of dialogue in which Kim and Trump would meet again with attendant political benefits for President Trump. And at the same time, the other option is the option that no one wants to go down, no one wants to choose, which is one of confrontation and conflict. So in order to maximize, in a way, force the United States to choose between the two options, I think he's dangling this possibility of meeting with President Trump for the third time.
If Kim Jong-un and Trump actually meet in December, what are the possible scenarios of the outcome of their summit?
So we have to think about this. Right now, the trajectory that North Korea is engaged in is one of escalating provocations, escalating tensions, to use that as a leverage on the United States. So we can imagine with the deadline again, by December, the pressure on the United States to do something with the North Korea will be at its maximum, so to speak. So in that sense, I think the United States will be thinking about giving something to North Korea in order to manage the situation at least. And in that sense, even though we're talking about a huge downside risk if the summit doesn't lead to an outcome, at the same time, increase the chance of some possible result might come out of it. So we are in between the two very dramatic and different results in a way. So I think it's a period of high uncertainty. And I think since the NIS disclosed the fact that North Korea is seriously considering meeting with President Trump again before the end of the year, I think more information will come out which will allow us to gauge what kind of results will come out of this potential meeting.
Now, the National Intelligence Agency also said that Kim Jong-un may visit China before the year ends. Do you expect that to happen? And if Kim and Xi meet, what kind of outcome do you expect from that meeting?
In my assessment, I think the likelihood of another visit by Kim Jong-un to Beijing is probably more likely than the third meeting between Trump and Kim because, she already visited North Korea June of this year. So in a way, and then also this is the year of 70 years anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between DPRK and China. So in a way, I think Kim, for diplomatic protocol reasons, would owe a visit back to China. So he has to go back anyways, in a way. And the second reason is because no matter what happens in the negotiation with Washington, if say there are two scenarios here. One is in which there's a summit with President Trump. Then we have seen the pattern here where North Korean leader will go to Beijing for consultation with Xi before meeting with the U.S. president. So he'll go there to Beijing anyways. But even if there's no third meeting between Washington and Pyongyang, I think Kim will go to Beijing before the deadline to get the assurances of backing from China in case North Korea escalates again in the next year. So anyways, I think there's a need for North Korea to North Korean leader to go to Beijing.
Now to inter-Korean relations. South Korea has proposed North Korea to meet face-to-face to hold talks on the Mount Geumgang resort and Mount Geumgang tour as a whole. Instead of accepting the proposal, North Korea has instead fired off another projectiles into the East Sea. What kind of message is North Korea sending to the South?
Well, it's a very clear message. I think we don't have to interpret it too deep. I mean, it's clear that North Korea doesn't want to talk to South Korea at this juncture. Right now, their attention is focused in Washington. I mean, clearly, all their diplomatic energies is being spent on realizing this either like a third meeting with Trump or like some sort of a agreement. So in that sense, they don't have time or resources to meet with the South Korean counterparts. That's one. And second is that they are using, this, like a lack of engagement with South Korea as a leverage or like as an instrument to raise tension in the Korean Peninsula. So when Washington sees that inter-Korean relations are not doing well and it's not going anywhere, then this increase the perception that the North Koreans are being aggressive again. So in turn, that increases the pressure on Washington to do something, take action. So I think the North Koreans are taking into account this kind of different scenarios right now.
North Korea's latest projectile launch came about 30 days after the North launched submarine-launched ballistic missile, and it marked the 12th missile launch this year alone. Could you tell us a little bit about the specifications of North Korea's latest projectiles?
So in terms of the significance of the latest test, which involved a short-range rocket, I mean, it will be actually, it's a message directed at South Korea because this rocket that the North Koreans tested doesn't really have a capability to carry nuclear warheads, unlike the one they tested last month, the SLBM, which even though it's an intermediate or short-range missile, it can carry a nuclear warhead, so it has a strategic meaning in it. But the rocket they tested is actually part of the conventional weaponry that North Koreans are developing right now, even though it has a very long range for a simple rocket system. It's guided, and it's a maximum range of around 300 miles, which in terms of range can include the entire South Korea, geographically speaking. So in that sense, it cannot threaten elsewhere. It cannot threaten Japan or the United States, but it threaten South Korea. So it's a message directed at South Korea, unlike the SLBM test, which was squarely directed at Japan and the United States. So North Koreans are using two different tactics here. They are sending a message to Washington, and then that message is followed by a message directed at South Korea. So they're taking turns in that sense, and then by doing so, they are actually maximizing the perception that North Koreans are going to do something nasty.
Now, the U.S. has expressed concerns over North Korea's projectile launch, while Japan has said that it's a violation of UN resolutions. South Korea has also expressed concerns. How do you gauge the impact of North Korea's projectile launch on inter-Korean relations?
Well, so clearly it's not doing any good to the inter-Korean relations, but I think the bigger shock for the South Korean administration was Kim Jong-un's visit to Mount Geumgang resort and the statements he gave there, which essentially was very anti-South Korea in a way. It was very aggressive. I mean, he threatened to demolish the South Korean facilities there, appropriate the South Korean properties and investments in Mount Geumgang. So that was a lot more aggressive than, say, the military exercises that North Korea just carried out. In terms of a scale of provocation, clearly the latest one was smaller than the SLBM test they carried out. So the South Korean administration's reaction to the latest provocation, so to speak, I mean, it's not surprising because I think the South Korean government finally is realizing that North Koreans that they mean it when they are expressing discontent about South Korea's attitude towards North Korea. So I think, I mean, the South Korean government probably has decided that, taking a step back and trying to be nice or positive, or trying to not to react to the North Korea's aggressive statements to South Korea, it's not working anymore. So in a way, South Korean government sees the value in being more confrontational, I would say, with North Korea, so that it can drive the message home to Pyongyang that South Korea also has a limit in terms of patience.
Now, on the same day, North Korea fired those projectiles. Reports came out that Kim Jong-un had sent condolences to President Moon Jae-in following the death of President Moon's mother. Now, many interpreted that as a positive signal to inter-Korean relations. How did you see that?
Well, it was, it's clearly a positive gesture coming from Pyongyang. But then I think Kim Jong-un has he's playing two games at the same time. One is, we are allowed to call it games. Kim Jong-un is thinking about this strategic interplay with South Korea, but also with the United States. So because his time is running out, so to speak, because of the imposed deadline that he came up with himself, he wants to maintain certain level of relations with both Washington and Seoul, but at the same time, he kind of wastes time by taking a sit back and trying to gauge reactions coming from Seoul and Washington to each one of his actions. So even though his action of sending condolences to the South Korean president and at the same time testing missiles seem contradictory, but in the multiple games that North Korea is engaged in right now, it makes total sense because North Korea is looking at it. The all North Korean eyes are probably focused on the end of the year. Somehow they have to come out with either the summit with Trump or some sort of agreement with the United States. So they don't have a minute to waste, so to speak. So sure, it looks very contradictory and weird, but at the same time, from the North Koreans' point of view, this is the only option that they have.
So this month and the next will be very critical. It will be a critical juncture for the peace process on the Korean Peninsula. We also heard today through reports that North Korea is now promoting its Mount Geumgang tour program online. And this came after rejecting South Korea's calls to meet face-to-face for talks on Mount Geumgang tours. And this obviously is seen as North Korea's efforts to up the pressure against South Korea. What do you think South Korean government should do next?
Well, I think the current South Korean government stance towards North Korea, we're sending a clear, stern message to North Korea whenever North Korea carries out an aggression or provocation. It's actually it's the right one, I would say. There's not much the South Korea can do in terms of restarting the cooperation with North Korea on Geumgang, Mount Geumgang project. I think in many ways North Korea is bluffing when North Koreans are threatening to shut down Mount Geumgang or appropriate South Korean investments there, because Mount Geumgang is a site that's actually special. Actually very specific to the Korean nation. Doesn't have much of a brand value to foreigners, so to speak. Nobody knows about Mount Geumgang outside of the Korean Peninsula. Even in China, few people know about Mount Geumgang. And also the location of Mount Geumgang itself is very close to South Korea. So it's actually designed in a way to attract South Korean tourism and investment. So I think North Koreans know this. So North Koreans know that even if they can open up any site in North Korea to international tourism, at the end of the day, the demand is going to come from South Korea. I think the South Korean government should be mindful of that and then take a more long-term approach to convince North Korea to change its mind about what they said about Mount Geumgang.
Now, in about 2 weeks' time, it marks the 21st anniversary since the joint Mount Geumgang tourism project was first launched between the two Koreas. Do you expect South Korea to make another proposal to the North to meet for talks on Mount Geumgang, marking the anniversary? So,
yeah, I'm definitely sure. I think the South Korean government would use that opportunity to re-establish a channel of dialogue with North Korea. After all, the ways North Korea decided to stop the provocations, the cycle of provocations at the end of 2017 and come to the negotiation table was the North Korean participation at Pyeongyang Olympics, which was started by South Korean government's invitation to Pyongyang to participate in the Olympics. So I think the South Korean government probably has a similar playbook in mind to entice North Korea to come out and then sit at the negotiation table and discuss again about the potential engagement projects. But at the same time, as I described before, North Korea's mind is focused on their negotiation with Washington. So it's unlikely North Korea will be distracted, quote unquote, thinking about engagement with South Korea at this juncture. So, but at the same time, I would actually give credit to South Korean government for trying. And no matter what happens before the end of the year or early next, North Korea will be there, and then I think there will be another chance at engagement. So for that, I think the South Korean government should keep working and should be prepared for the restart of the engagement.
All right, thank you as always, Dr. Goh, for your insights tonight.
My pleasure.